Thanks, Gregor. Afternoon, Paul. What can you tell us about your absentees, and is there also an update on Nikolaj Ehlers' status?
Yeah, he's back skating with us now, and he's shooting some pucks. We'll just see where the next 5-6 days get us to. I don't have him, I can't tell you he's in for sure, and I certainly can't tell you that he's not playing game one. We got to get those next 5 days through. And I would expect then that everybody else would be available for game one. For tomorrow, Andrew Kopp won't play. We'll keep him out. But he'll be back on the ice early part of next week, getting ready for it. So I think that's about the only change.
Go to Ken Weeb for a follow-up. Go ahead, Weaver.
What can you tell us about your plans for Hellebuyck? I know you mentioned earlier you might go half a game. Will he sit out? Will he play? What's your plan there?
He's going to play. He wants the game. It's just for him, it's all rhythm. To have played and then sit that many days out, it's not what he wants to do. He wants to get into the game. We'll monitor his workload a lot more closely than we would in a normal game. But if he's feeling good, he wants to play, and he wants to play the whole game. So we'll start with that.
We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Paul, besides, obviously Tucker and Nick, where are you guys? And I guess Andrew to a certain degree, where are you guys health-wise, and how do you see it as an advantage health-wise or otherwise, that the fact that you play on Wednesday after playing on Friday?
Yeah, it's a good block of days. You'll get a good day's rest, and then we'll kind of really change those first 3 days. We'll skate all three, but we'll go quite a bit differently in each day. So get to work on some things. Health-wise, the only one that we're kind of monitoring healing on is Nikolaj Ehlers. Our expectation is everybody else is going to be available to play.
I'll go back to Jeff Hamilton for a follow-up. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Gregor. Just a quick one follow-up, Paul. Just with how important is it to have your optimal lineup, or the lineup you're hoping to go with in the playoffs for Friday?
Yeah, I mean, injuries can really change a series at any time. Key pieces come in and out, but then you'll get to that point where you're going to have injuries, right? If you got any kind of run, you have to deal with those, and you'll have potentially key players out. Stamkos, out of the lineup and win the Stanley Cup in Tampa. So you have to be able to handle. There's a threshold for every NHL team that you get to a certain level, you're going to have a difficult time beating another playoff team if your numbers are just, if you get that beat up. But you do have to be able to survive injuries to expect to win a series.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Thanks, Gregor. Hey, Paul. The players over the last 2, 3, 4 games have been talking about getting a good feeling in the room. It looks like you got that after that last game. I wonder, though, when you have a skid the way that you guys had, confidence can be fragile. And I'm wondering, because there's not enough runway to really build up a winning streak and put that entirely behind you, what can you do? What can the players do to guard against that fragility when you get to the playoffs?
Well, in terms of scoring goals, I wasn't particularly concerned about the fact that we weren't, because the kind of goals that get scored in the regular season don't often look like the kind of goals that are scored in the playoffs. And we kind of getting into those tight games or those close games where scoring isn't easy can be really valuable. I don't feel that this group is fragile. I don't. I mean, that stretch that we went on, there were lots of factors to it, but all of them needed to kind of be tightened up and dealt with. And I think we're a lot closer to that, even in a couple of those losses. So I think there was value in it. If we can handle it right, there will look back at that stretch as a really critical, important part to our season. And you want to be careful about. I think you feel good about your game. That's fine. I mean, I think the guys are right. The room's been good. Like, even in that stretch, it was tough for sure, but there's lots of confidence in there right now.
We'll go back to Sean Reynolds for a follow-up. Go ahead, Sean.
Paul, I don't know if this would have anything to do with, how you guys were feeling over this stretch, but it looks to me like your penalty kill later in the season during this skid seems far less aggressive than it had earlier in the year. Was that by design, or is that just a function of how the team was feeling about itself and playing?
Yeah, a big chunk of that was Adam Lowry being out of our lineup. He has a major impact on that kill. So, but that's one of those signs, right? Power play's not going, you move the puck slow, and when the penalty kills got going, you move your feet slow. But I think there's going to be lots of confidence on the PK too. I think we get our guys healthy and get our killers out there. We'll be all right.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from 680 CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul, with respect to the schedule, 7 games possibly in a 12-day span, did you think that these kind of schedules were behind you with the regular season? Or
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, you just don't see back-to-back games in the playoffs very often. And you would prefer that you could keep your opponent on the road for another day, but I guess that's what happens when you don't win home ice advantage. But playoffs is, sometimes those, I would assume that sometimes after games of playoffs, you want to play the next day. Like if you have won, you're feeling like, let's go back and play a doubleheader, right? You're all jacked up. When you lose, you want to get back on it like right away. So the team that wins is going to think that the back-to-backs were great.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Paul, about tomorrow's game, do you hate these games, and do you hope they develop kind of a playoff level intensity, or would you rather both teams just kind of get through it?
Yeah, I just on the games that I've watched, maybe in the last 3 or 4, where some of this has got locked down, just other teams, they're not particularly physical. So you want to go into the game with a couple ideas that you want to be really good at. But I mean, I think there's gonna be a lot of puck movement tomorrow. It'll be a fast game, but I think you'll find most guys running fairly short routes in terms of finishing checks, right? But these games also can get away from you real fast. And I don't mean like score wise. I mean, there's almost it's going to sound terrible for hockey, but a gentleman's agreement, right? I don't think you're going to see any late hits, right? Both teams are getting ready to go on. There'll be a certain amount of respect on the ice. Play hard, play fast. And then if it happens that something gets away, there's a hit that's not liked, it can get real ugly real quick. But I don't expect that tomorrow. I mean, you want to get out, you want to get a good feeling. It's the last game and before we get going, but it won't have the same kind of animosity because there's nothing really on the line for anybody other than both teams trying to get that good feel.
I'll go back to Paul Friesen for a follow-up. Go ahead, Paul.
So fair to say you kind of dislike them?
Yeah, you know what? I like them way more than the games that you play and you're not playing in the playoffs. Like you hate those games. So this one, yeah, there's nothing really on the line, which is what hockey is. Like the difference between our sport is a full contact sport played very, very fast. Emotion is a critical piece to our game, right? And yeah, both coaches want the same thing. You want your team to play well. You get your fingers crossed nobody gets hurt, right? You can sit a guy out in a game and he can get hurt in the practice, right? And that's kind of the things you fear. And all these guys want to play these games. They want that good feeling. So let's get through it, get healthy, and get moving forward.
Go next to Sarah Lesky from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, Paul. What do you hope that your group took from your season series against the Oilers as you head into next week?
You know what? These season series are so disjointed, right? Like because how you come into the series is completely different than how the other come in. You've got health, you've got all those things that go into it. And I mean, we certainly have a healthy respect for what that team can do offensively off the rush. I think we have a way better understanding that they defend quite a bit differently than they did at the start of the year. I'm not talking about systems. I mean, both teams are trying to get to that point where they think they can score goals, but the key will be how well they defend. That would be what we would have taken, I think.
We'll go back to Sarah for a follow-up. Go ahead, Sarah.
And when you look at the team's recent play, what is it that stood out to you most about your group that you feel that maybe you're making strides in the right direction with?
We're better handling the rush and not putting ourselves in the position to be chasing the rush game. They're going to get their chances, right? They've got some elite world-class players that can make an even strength rush turn into an odd man pretty quick just on their own talent alone, but we certainly can't be feeding that. And I like the way especially in the Vancouver, but there might be 2 or 3 times games before that, but I like the way some of our offensive game is coming. I know we're not scoring goals and everybody's in a panic about that, but those goals that we were scoring easy, they disappear. The Appleton goal with Lowry net front, that's we're going to need the tip from Mark Scheifele. Those kind of things are the ones that that's what you're going to be looking for.
We'll go next to Kevin McGran from the Toronto Star. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, Coach, good to see you again. This is a little off the beaten track here, but when it comes to the way that you and all the other coaches had to coach this year, communicate with your players, the limited ways that the pandemic forced upon you, is there anything about the way that you were forced to coach that you would carry on after the pandemic has passed? I mean, I know you won't wear a mask anymore, but when it's all over,
Right.
Is there anything about this that you kind of liked?
I think I'll go back to that kind of 3-game series that we had in Toronto. We spend an awful lot of time talking about things about mental wellness. And that's something I probably haven't done a whole lot of, but asking the questions, how are these guys doing? And getting to them individually, how are you handling this? Because I can't come out here and say that it's a tough life in the NHL, because relative to what other people in the world are going through, like, seriously, how bad is it? You're at the Ritz for 7 days. How tough is that, right? But then there's this isolation piece that we're no different than anybody else. So we started thinking about and talking about just that idea of mental wellness and mental well-being, and thinking about it more than just winning and losing hockey games. So I think there's a contact there with players that I probably didn't have the same way in the past. And I think it was valuable. I think it was valuable for me, and even helping in our stretch that things were going bad for us. I found this group got tighter in the last 4 or 5 games, got closer together, not further apart. And that was a really, kind of big positive. Felt coming out of that Montreal game after a real tough night, that the players had got it right after that game. They had kind of come together and started to work our way out of this a little bit. So there's a sense of community here, maybe that's born out of not having any other community that you can contact with. It's just us. And I think we came out of that and would understand that that's, put more stock and more time into how the players are doing individually from a mental health standpoint.